Awesome. Well, hello everyone and welcome to this Microsoft Forms Level 100 training session. As a reminder, this training is being recorded and will be available on demand for up to 180 days. All you need to do to watch this back is pop the join link back into your browser and you can recap anything we've shown today. To join anonymously, feel free to log out and log back in using a private web browser as well. Now, just in case it is your first time joining us, I'm sure you've probably been on a few of these sessions before. This is being hosted through a Microsoft Team live event. And that means that you do have plenty of controls available for yourselves to view the stream. You can play or pause the event at any time using the bottom left play pause button. You can change the volume using the speaker icon, and you can even rewind the session, even though it's live, by using the white dot making its way across the bottom of the player. Simply click and drag it to the left to recap anything you've missed. And if you want to catch up with us live, hit the live button next to the timer. Towards the bottom right of your screen, you have the option to turn on captions. It's a CC button with a square around it. So if you do want to have subtitles to follow along with, please toggle that on. And to the right of that, we have the settings wheel. Here you can change how those captions look and up the video quality, just in case we're looking a little bit blurry on your side. You can also go full screen by using the two-sided arrow at the very bottom right. This will, however, get rid of your Q&A, and if you want to bring it back or it's not visible already, you can press the question mark with two speech bubbles around it in the top right of your screen. This is the only way you can interact with us today, as your camera and microphone will not be in use. Once your Q&A is visible on the right-hand side, there are a couple of sections you need to know about. The featured section towards the left is the public area and controlled entirely by my moderator, Claudia, who I'll introduce in just a moment. There we can post any announcements, any links you may need, and also just generally share any questions that you have to the rest of the audience to answer publicly. On the right-hand side, we have the My Questions area. This is where all of your questions will go first for my moderator to respond to privately, or again, push into the featured section and answer for everybody. So make sure you're checking both spaces if you're looking for your answers. Towards the bottom, you can pop in your name next to this little person, ask the question in the box below, and if you are feeling a bit shy, you can toggle on Post as Anonymous, we don't mind. But once you're all set, send away your question using this little paper plane icon in the bottom right. As a reminder, this is a Microsoft Forms Level 100. That just means it's an introductory session covering off the basics of forms. Ask questions throughout the session using the Q&A. I will be checking in every so often. Your microphone and camera are not in use, and do make sure you can hear me clearly. Do let us know if you can hear any audio interference in the background as well. I'm actually on site at the Microsoft Experience Centre in London today, so I do apologise if it's a little noisy. But who is with you today? Well, my name is Catherine. I am a Microsoft Training Associate from that London Experience Centre, and I'm going to be your presenter today. I've done quite a few sessions with you, so might be familiar to a couple of you, but I'm not alone. I'm also joined by the lovely Claudia. So Claudia, introduce yourself and let people know your role today.
Thank you so much, Kat, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on another Microsoft training session. I've published a couple of messages in the Q&A. I can see that one person already found them and gave it a thumbs up. But as Kat mentioned, she will be presenting today, and myself, Claudia, I will be in the background. I will be in that Q&A with all of you. And you will hear me every now and then over the microphone interacting as well. But more or less, I will be the producer and the moderator for today's training session. And I'm also one of the training associates from the London Experience Centre for Microsoft. Other than this, I would like to wish everyone happy learning. I hope you take some new, I don't know, you learn about some new features today, maybe something they didn't know was there. And feel free to pop in any questions. I'll be waiting.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Claudia. So what's our agenda for today? Well, firstly, we're going to be taking a look at the navigation and functionality of Forms Online. It is an online-only application, so we'll be going through office.com to get there. And then once we've got a bit more familiar with how we move around forms, what we have access to, then we can start creating a form of our very own. We're also going to touch on quizzes a little bit as well. There is a little bit of a difference between them. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at how to manage and maybe analyze some of the results from our forms too. So what is Microsoft Forms? Well, it's a simple, lightweight web application that allows you to create surveys, quizzes, and polls that can be used to collect customer feedback, employee satisfaction, or just improve your business needs. Basically, if you want to have a form to get results from people, see what's going on, this is the place for you. It's really easy to use, it's very intuitive, and you can create a really nice form in just a couple of minutes if you like to. You can get a bit more in depth though. You can do things like question branching. So surveys actually work the way you want them to, with having a new question pop up if they've answered in a specific way. Really handy. You can also add themes or your company logo to these forms to make them look really nice as well. Very professional too. And again, they can be used on mobile and desktop. So if your customers are looking at your forms and on their mobile device, you'll be able to get a sneak peek of what that will look like without having to open it up yourself. And of course, there's no point surveying people without being able to take a look at the results. So we are going to be able to collect responses in real time with forms, so you can see exactly what's going on. There's a dedicated tab to it and allows you to filter results by respondents as well, which is really, really handy. You can also export all of these results into a lovely Excel sheet for you to further analyze, or perhaps even use in something like a Power BI dataset. There's plenty for you to do with Microsoft Forms. And speaking of that, I'm actually going to hop into a demonstration. So bear with me for the moment. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to make sure I have my Forms web page up and ready to go. There we go. And here we have it. You should be able to see my Office space cloud here. Is that correct?
Yep, we can see it very nicely.
No problem. Thank you. So here we are in office.com, and I want to say, just to highlight, I am logged in with my demo account today as usual. So any of the information you see here is not true. It's false information. And also, if we do send out a poll to you using the demo forms account today as well, you know, your results aren't really going anywhere either. So don't worry about that. I can check what account I'm using in the top right of my screen. And next, well, I'm already in my all app view, but if you're not and you can't find forms down the left-hand side of your screen, just click this all apps button at the bottom left. Here, you can then find forms listed up at the top. And when you click on this, you'll be taken over to a forms page. Here, we can take a look at maybe some forms that we have been using already. Any forms that we've pinned ourselves. As you can see, I don't have an awful lot of forms going on at the moment, and any forms that have been directly shared with me as well. Much like yourselves, if you haven't been using forms too much, you'll probably have a very similar sort of lack of content to me here. But if you are using forms frequently and you do want to be able to take a proper look through, you can filter your list of forms up in the top right, and you can even show how it's viewed. So you can have it as tiles, which is the standard, but you can also shrink that down into a list, particularly good if you have a lot of forms responses going on. If you can't find your form here, but you absolutely know it's one of yours, you can head to All My Forms, which opens up more of a dedicated forms space. You can see here they have pretty much the same options, but this one's still part of office.com. We still have that navigation towards the left, whereas here it's all about the forms. And we can see I actually have a few more available for me, perhaps some older forms that I haven't used in quite a while. There's even a recycle bin here too, once we go into the more forms option. So we can, if we've deleted a form and we need to recover it, we can do so. While we're in the forms area as well, there is the option to start collections. So this is a new feature and allows you to just keep track of your forms, see what's going on. So in this case, maybe I want an internal forms collection, and then I can drag and drop any forms, quizzes or polls into this particular area. Great. It'll keep things nice and organized for you as you start creating more Wow, more forms. So when we talk about creating a form, you actually have a couple of ways to get started. Now, of course, if I wanted to open up a current form I have, I can just give it a click. But if we wanted to get going, creating a brand new form to get started with, I have a couple of options. We have a form and we have a quiz. Now, a form really is just a survey. There's no right or wrong answers there. It's to get results from people and take a look at maybe opinion, check learning, ask questions and get some good feedback. However, a quiz is a little bit different. This is it's more like a pop quiz, something like that. And there are dedicated correct answers within it. So in a form, you might ask, what do you like most about Teams? In a quiz, you might say what features are available in Teams and then have a list of tick boxes for people to use. Because of this, you can select right or wrong answers and actually go back in and grade the quizzes too to give results. So it could be very good for some sort of knowledge check to see how any internal learning is going, or if you want to check that someone sort of knows procedure, for example. So they both have their use cases. Very likely you'll be using forms the most as they're a bit more general use. And because of that, I'm going to click on the new form option. Now, when you start a new form, this is what you're going to be greeted with. We can see across the top, we have our forms ribbon. Just below that, we have a few extra settings. As you can see, the forms interface is very simplified and it makes it a lot easier to use than some other apps, in my opinion. And at the very top, we can also see untitled form and saved. This area up here, the saved section, is just showing me that, as I'm creating this form, because it's web-based, it will auto save as I make changes. And of course, if I want to change the title, all I have to do is click on the title area and type it in the box. So maybe we're going to have something like a work feedback form. Or maybe we're going to do a work from home temperature check. Whatever we want to call it. I can enter a description underneath. So if I wanted to explain that a bit more, I can say survey to understand you are doing at work, whatever it may be. You may have also spotted towards the right of this section, I have the option to insert an image here. And this can be using a Bing image search from OneDrive or by uploading it from my PC. So maybe here I want to put a, I don't know, thermometer. And we've chosen things tagged with Creative Commons too. So maybe I'll use this one. We can add it. We can see how it looks. And there we go. Kind of nice. Just a little extra bit of flair to this. We could also add something like a company logo, whatever it may be, to just flesh this out. And now we've changed that title. We can see up at the top, it's been renamed, and we have this little saved area here. And if I were to, start typing different things, it's going to say saving. So you always know when it's safe to actually leave the page. Now, before we start adding new sections to this particular form, now that we have our title set up, I want to explore some of your options in the top right. Now, the first one here is the preview button. So right now we're in the editing area of the form. I'm not actually able to submit any responses, click on any of the buttons and test how they work. I'm just here to create the questions. The preview section allows me to open the form as if I was a colleague, right? Someone that I've shared the form to, someone who's giving a response, and I can submit my form here as well. One thing I will note, if you are submitting responses while doing this sort of preview option, they will be put into the responses area of the quiz, so it can also be a nice way to practice how to export results. Next, we have theme. So we've got set up with a title, we have a nice little picture here, but we can add a theme to this. And we have some really nice theme ideas already created for us. As some little templates, but if we scroll down, we get a few more options, such as a general color. We also have some more, I would say, school-friendly options here. They can be quite a lot of fun, quite nice, cartoony. But we can also click the plus to add a custom theme as well. So again, if I know that we have a company color and it is hex, I don't know, 123 FF, whatever it may be, I can pop that in here. You do need the hex number to do this. Little tip from me, if you want to get the hex number for something, one of the ways that I've found to do it, there's probably an easier way, but it's just to put the image of whatever you want into PowerPoint. So I'm actually going to show you that here. Say I wanted this particular color. I would just maybe find this square, go to anywhere I can get a color option. So it's the shape fill. Use the eyedropper to get that color. And if I go to more fill colors, what you'll find is that that color has been selected and now the hex value for it is available down at the bottom. So again, bit long-winded, but can be done. And if we head back to forms and pop that hex number in, now we can have this to be the theme for our buttons. I'm quite liking that. And then when it comes to maybe a background image, again, I can use OneDrive or upload something if I want to. So maybe we're just going to have, I don't know, computer. See what we get for that. We're probably not going to get the best results, to be perfectly honest here. Maybe this one. We're going to add it just to show what that looks like. This will basically form the background image of your form. Just like that. So you have full control over how you want your form to actually be laid out, whether you want it to be nice and simplistic, whether you want it to have a background image, it could also be a solid color you're using there, and choosing what color you want for your buttons as well. Now that's all right, but to be perfectly honest, I think this one is a much better option for us. The image quality is a lot higher, looks much better. So I've just gone ahead and chosen that. And then as we go a little bit further along, we do have a few more options. Now we do have the send button here. This is where we choose how to collect our responses. By default, any form that you create is only respondable to by people in your organization. And we can see that up at the top. But if I click on that option, I can make it anyone can respond. This opens it up to the general public. So if I wanted to do a customer survey, this could be a good option for me. If I wanted to survey specific people, so even if they shared the form out, I wouldn't be getting results from anybody else, I can do that as well for my organization and then add the people underneath. For example, maybe we've had a meeting about something and I only want the shareholders to respond to a particular form. I can list them in this area so that nobody else can see what sort of questions I'm asking. I'm going to keep it to, actually, I'm going to pop anyone can respond. Why not? Here I get the URL to get sort of responses for. So here I can copy this and I can share it out, maybe post it in Teams, post it on a website, whatever it may be, and then people can come in and start answering the questions that we have. Notice there's even a little shorten URL button here. So we get a nice short form, little option for us, a little bit easier for people to type in. But I do have the option to email this. It's going to open up my Outlook with a link to the form in there. So I can format a nice email. I can generate a QR code and I can even generate an embed link as well. So if you have a web page that you want to have this form on and be interactable there, this could be a good choice for you. This also works inside of Sway, which is quite nice. Now, we've gone through the send area, but what about the ellipsis? Well, here's where we can change a lot more of our settings. If I wanted to send the form as a template or maybe as a way to collaborate on it, so rather than sending out the form to get responses, I'm actually going to send it to a colleague to work on it with me. I can do that by choosing the collaborate or duplicate option. This previously used to be in the send area, but it's now been moved to the ellipsis to keep it a bit separate. And now I can get a link to view and edit the document that I could then share to Claudia. Then she can come on and start changing up these questions. And I can share it as a template too. So if I've made a really, really good form that I want to be used over and over again, maybe just tweaking a few of the questions, I can get a duplicate to it, share it out with people, then they can open up this version of the form and then make some changes while I still get to keep my master copy. Really handy. Now, a bit further down, we do have a settings area. This is very important, especially if you're sharing out this form to people who are, internal to your organization, or you want to go back in and change how the response options work. You can actually see here, as well as in the send menu, we do have who can respond to this form. inside the settings area too. So if I want it to be anybody, great, that works for me. I can choose to accept responses. If I toggle this off, the form is actually not able to be filled in. So maybe if I'm working on it right now and I don't want the link to be used, I can. When I toggle that on, I can choose a start date and an end date for this. So I can automatically choose when my form isn't going to be live. So maybe I only want my form to be live between 11:15 and 12:15. We'll give everybody an hour, whatever it may be. Could be a week, could be, a few days. I can choose shuffle questions. So if I want my form to have a random order of questions, I can do that. I can show a progress bar for some of these as well. Unfortunately, as we don't have any questions just yet, that's not going to be active. And I can even customize a thank you message. So when we submit a form, we get a thank you. It's just going to be a thank you, your response was submitted. Maybe you want something custom, like thank you for letting us know your thoughts, whatever it may be. Now, the next one is allow receipt of responses after submission. So these are only for non-anonymous people. It allows them to download their responses after they've submitted the form. Really good if you're doing maybe an internal organizational one. And I can actually get an email notification for each response as well. So if I want to keep track on how many people are filling that in, I can do so. Now, with anyone can respond, this form is always going to be anonymous. It's not going to track who's actually, it's going to track like anonymous user 1, 2, and 3's results and keep them separate from each other, but it's not going to tell you anything about the user just to maintain privacy. However, if I swap it to people inside my org, because we actually have that information available to us, I can choose to record the name, and I can even limit it to 1 response per person. And I can toggle these on or off individually as well, so I can still keep it anonymous if I like. Then, of course, I can choose specific people in my org. Again, I can either record the name, include 1 response per person, or both. So really handy. I'm going to stick this to anybody though. And lastly, but certainly not least, a couple more options. We have a multilingual option. So the primary language for this particular form is UK, but I can add an additional language below. So maybe I want this to be in Italian. I can do that as well. And now people will actually have an option in the top right of the form to translate it over into Italian. So that's pretty nice too. So just to make you aware, you do have some additional language options here too. And I can choose to edit that language too. So if I want to, change the title, for example, change the subtitles and actually put in my own translation there to make it sure it really works, I can do. Great. Now that's just a bit of navigation. So we've got the kind of setup for our form here. What about adding the actual questions? Well, before I jump into that and probably the meat of this, I do want to check in with Claudia if we had any questions already about maybe sharing, themes, things like that.
Thank you for stopping by, Kat. The Q&A is very, very quiet. So far, we haven't received not 1 question. So I just want to remind everyone, we still have plenty of time. We've got like more than half an hour to go through some more content. So we got 10 attendees as well watching us right now. If any of you wants to ask anything from the features that Kat has just demonstrated to all of us, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A. I'm still going to be here waiting to provide some further support if necessary. But other than this, Kat, I think for now we're good to continue. We'll see what else will happen afterwards.
No problem. And I think, again, it's important to understand the setup, your permissions and things like that. But of course, you can go in and edit these at the end too. But now we're all set up, we can start adding our questions. So all I have to do here is click the Add New button. Really easy. And I get presented with a few different types of questions that I can ask whoever I'm surveying here. First one we have is the choice question, and this could be single choice or multiple choice. There's a toggle for that. And I can ask my question and say, how are you feeling about working from home? Something like that. And I can say, good. And when I do put in some of these options, you know, again, these are my response options, really easy. I just have to click, I can choose add an option as well down at the bottom to keep going, or I can just hit enter on my keyboard. And because Forms is intelligent, it's actually going to use AI to give me some extra options just underneath to say, hey, you're asking about this. You probably want the rest of these responses in, and I can just, you know, click to add all of them if I want to. Now we notice we maybe clicked a bit too far here. I don't think exceptional is how most people would describe the way they're feeling about something. And if I do want to remove an option, all I have to do is click the bin next to it. So we're going to put this as not so good. This is really nice. I can again add my options down at the bottom. I can also choose to add another option. So again, this will give someone the option to actually say, hey, you know, this is what I'm actually doing. You could also use this for things like, how did you find out about us? You know, what did you think of this? And give people some extra choices just down at the bottom. So that's all good. And this is the important bit down here. So we have a couple of switches. Firstly, I have the multiple answers switch. This will turn my sort of radio buttons here, which are the single response options, into squares, which allow us to basically have a selection of tick boxes. So we can choose as many or as little options as we want here. I'm going to toggle that off for this. And just while I'm here as well, you may have noticed as I'm hovering over these sections, to the left of it, you get these little dots. This is kind of like a grip icon and just means that you can actually click here to drag around your options as well. So really easy to just format this however you like. Going back down to the bottom, we have multiple answers, but here we also have the required toggle. By turning this on, it makes it mandatory for people to complete before they're able to submit the quiz or form. If they haven't filled in this question, then they're not even able to submit it. So really important if you want to get your main question absolutely responded to every time. Now beyond that, we have ellipses on the question itself, and these are a few more extra options for us. So I can shuffle my options. So instead of having them listed with good, fair, not so good, and other, you know, imagine if this was a quiz and I'm asking questions. I don't want everybody to be sort of nudging each other and saying, actually, the correct answer to question 1 is the first option. This way I can shuffle the options. So every time someone looks at this quiz, these selections are going to be in a completely different and random order. Next, we have the drop down option. So I can choose to make these sort of a drop down selection choice rather than it being just a radio sort of click on the one that you want. I'm going to turn that off. I quite like these radio buttons here. We can also add a subtitle. So if I wanted to describe the question a little bit more, give a bit more detail, perhaps, I certainly can do. Maybe something like, this quiz is, I keep saying quiz, I do mean this form is anonymous. So honestly, whatever you may do. Maybe you want to elaborate on the question, whatever it may be. And then we have one final option. This is add branching. We'll come back to this a bit later, but branching allows us to say, if this person said not so good, maybe I want to add a separate question just for those people saying, feel free to explain below. Let's do that actually. That's a nice use case. So let's add branching. And you can see here now we get a branching options area. So if they say good, we can say go to next, or we can end the form, and so on. But if we make so underneath, maybe I want to add a question that says, please explain why you feel this way. I can have a subtitle once again. I'm actually going to not have that there. And then this is a text box answer, so I can choose again to make it required or not. Maybe I'm not going to make this one required. And then I can also choose to have a short answer or a long answer here to give people a bit more space. Now that we have this second question, going back to the first one, I can then add branching to that and say, if you put not so good, go to question number 2. Whereas if they put good, maybe if I had a third question, I can get them to skip over this particular one and go to question number 3. So it wouldn't be visible to the other responses and so on. As you can see from me working through this, generally better to maybe add the branching towards the end once you've got all your questions sorted out, but consider it as you're working so you know what sort of questions that you want to ask. You can also reset any branching options if you find it getting a bit overwhelming in the top right with the ellipses. Great. So let's head back. We've explored the sort of radio buttons here, the multiple choice question. We've explored the text-based question. What about a rating? Well, very simply, it is, well, a rating scale. And I can ask my question here and say, how are you finding the survey so far? Just a basic question. And then below we have our 5-star options. If I click on the 5, I can actually change it to as little as 2 stars if I wanted to, or all the way up to 10. I can choose if I want it to be a star or a numbered button here. And with all of these as well, I can add like a little picture. I can add an image next to it. So again, maybe I want to upload an image this time. Got a little PNG here. And I can pop that in if I want. Go in and edit this if I need to. I can make it a larger image. I can make it a smaller image. Like there's a lot you can do in this particular area. I can add some alternative text as well for people using screen readers, always very important. And I can even add a video too if I want to. Really useful. Again, we can make this required and down at the bottom. I can actually add labels to these as well. So if I want to say what one actually means to avoid any confusion, I could say terrible for 1, and for 10 I could say excellent. Whatever you want to call it. A lot of flexibility with forms. And speaking of flexibility, if you decide you actually want to reorder your questions as well, you're very welcome to. You can do this by using the arrows in the top right of the question. I can also copy a question. I can also delete a question this way as well. So maybe I want to pop this up to be question number 2. Maybe I want to leave my branching options maybe a bit further down just to get people, you know, adding in those things at the end, perhaps, whatever it may be. I'm going to pop this back down, I think. I mean, let's keep going. So we also have a date option. This can be really nice if you want people to submit dates for things, ask people what date they would like to maybe do this again. So perhaps when would you like the company meeting to be held? There we go. Oh, a popular question mark there. And then we can input a date. Well, they can input a date, you can see here. And again, not really a lot of options with this one. It is just getting people to input a date. It's going to be in day, month, year because I'm based in the UK. But if you had your office in America, it would likely pull from that option too. And then lastly, in the drop-down menu, we have a few more options here. So we have a ranking option. This allows me to rank different options as we go. So maybe what's your favorite Teams feature? Bit of a boring question, but there we go. And I can put meetings, chats, file, co-authoring. And again, we can just keep adding our options a bit further down as we go. Same before, subtitle and branching always available. We even have a Likert scale as well, or Likert scale as I call it. And here, again, we can use this to sort of see how people are doing. This is one of those more involved questions, I would say. So please rate your opinion of the below sessions, whatever it may be. And again, I can choose option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can add more options if I want to. I can actually remove options as well if I think it's too many. So maybe we'll just slim this down to 3 options. And we're going to have poor. We're going to have fair. And we're going to have good. And then I can say Power BI. Then I can have forms. Then I can add one for Word, and so on. And then people can let me know what they're feeling about these particular areas too, which is very, very handy. Again, required. And a few more. We have a file upload option. Now, this allows people to attach a file to the particular form. Imagine you're creating this form to submit tech concerns. Perhaps you want people to upload a file of their problem, maybe an image that they've taken, something like that. So it can be very, very handy. However, what you may notice is I do not have that option because anything that you share publicly, so anything that's able to be viewed and responded to by the general public, cannot have file uploads added simply because, of course, it would just be a bit of a data concern if people can upload things to your sort of file storage locations. Bit strange. And then we also have a Net Promoter Score as well. So if you do want to have a true Net Promoter Score looking area there, you certainly can do. However, you can just as well get away with the same sort of thing by using this little sort of scale option instead. Awesome. Now, one more thing we can do here is actually create an entirely new section of this quiz. So if you wanted to have almost like a second page of this particular form, maybe you have a section about one element, maybe you have a section about something else, you certainly can do. And again, we can give each section a title. So if we had our first section up at the top, this is called section 1. I can move the section, I could add branching to different sections too. So that could be another way for you to do any branching. And in terms of section 2, maybe we want to have this be, I'm not sure, what future, let's type that in, future training would. And then we can have a description. As you can see, we kind of actually split up our form already here, which is kind of useful. It's actually made a duplicate of the previous section, which is very handy. And again, now that your form uses branching, you can stop estimating. You can start estimating completion time a little bit over here as well. I can go back in and delete these questions if I'm not feeling it. Maybe I don't want this particular question to be there. Maybe I want to change it. Loads and loads of options for you to do so. Pretty much you can go through and make this as fancy as you like, to be perfectly honest. So maybe we want to remove these questions entirely. And you can see they're still part of section 1, which is very handy. Excellent. I think I'm going to remove this section. It's a little bit much, so I'm just going to remove that. You can see just the section, but I can also remove the section and questions. There we go. And again, I can just remove the section now, and we're back to our single page form like before, which is very, very handy. And maybe I want to remove this section as well. Now we don't have any sections in our form at all. Sectioning can be very handy, again, if you're using branching. Maybe if people answer a certain way, you want to branch them to a little bit of a different area there. And now that we have this full set of questions, branching will be really, really handy. So based on the first question, where do we want to send them to? If they said not so good, we want them to go to feel this way. If they said fair, we can then direct them all to question 3, allowing them to effectively skip question number 2 if they're feeling okay. And this is how you can start sort of slotting in specific questions for specific responses. So if people rated something badly, you can have a specific area pop up to say, hey, why did you say that? Whereas anybody else who gave a higher score wouldn't be able to see this. So again, very handy if you want to do branching. And this will save as you go. All you have to do is click back once you're happy with it. You get this little icon up here just to show that there is branching available. And there you have it. So that's pretty much it when it comes to adding your questions. We've actually explored all of the question types available for a survey. And this is the time where you go back to that send menu. Anyone can respond and then copy that link. Again, probably best to also just double check your settings to make sure that you have your start, end date, times, and whatever it may be available and correct. Of course, if you decide in the middle that, hey, actually, I don't want to accept responses right now. You want to close the form manually yourself. All you have to do is actually just untick this accept responses area. And you can even send in a message to the recipients to say this form is no longer active, whatever it may be. We can also preview this. So if I hit preview, now we can see what this form looks like. So if I say good, we get the rest of the questions available. If I say not so good, I have to explain how I feel that way. And again, you can kind of see that branching in action as we go. Anything marked with an asterisk is also considered required. So you can see here, we only really need to fill in the first one if we want to submit. And then we can go ahead and look at how we can answer some of these questions. So this is what the date is looking like. Maybe we'll say it's for next month. Favorite part, training. I can order these how I like. So there we go. I can also click and drag them around, so that's helpful. And then maybe I want to go in and give some scores here too. And then I can submit my response. We've got that thanks, we have that custom. Thank you for letting us know your thoughts response as well. Because this was anonymous, I can submit another one. And if I wanted to see what this looks like on mobile, I have a toggle up at the top right. And there we have a little phone view here to see what that's actually going to look like for us. Really handy. Now that we have a demo response there, we can sort of see what the response area looks like. So here I can see I have a single response. I've got the average time to complete the form being tracked, and I have the status of the form. Currently, it's active and accepting responses. Below, I get some snapshots of the results. So how are we feeling about work from home? We have a nice pie chart here. People have put that they hadn't enjoyed it. We'd be able to see a nice split. I can see explain why you feel this way. We've got a number of how many responses have you found so far, and then the latest responses. So you can't exactly rank text-based responses. So again, it's just going to show you number and what those were. How are you finding the survey so far? How many responses? Average number. Latest options for dates. Choicing here. So our first choice in this case was chats mostly. And again, we can see that here too. This is what our sort of Likert scale is looking like as well. So you can get a rough idea of how everything is looking. And then lastly, we have that NPS promoter score here too. So we have a promoter, we could have a passive, and we can have detractors as well, based on how much of a score that you have given. We have a view results option too. So we can actually see the individual results that people have put. So I can see anonymous user number one's response options particularly. And you can imagine this would be extremely useful if we had actually chosen to record names and share this internally. We could see exactly what each person is feeling like. There's also an open in Excel button. If I do this, it's going to download an Excel form for me. And we'll be able to see up at the top our responses. So we have our ID here. This is just going to be 1 because it's anonymous. Start time, end time, email and name recorded as well. Language. Then we've got how are you feeling? We've got good. Explain why we didn't get anything. How are you finding it? 10 and so on. So you can see all of your results in a single sheet. You could then work on this however you want to. It's formatted into a table already, so it's really handy. And again, just really, really useful. We can also go to the ellipses here, print a summary of our responses. We can also create something called a summary link. So if I wanted to share these results with somebody else, let's see what that would look like. This is what they'll get. Sweet. Now, before I jump into quizzes, just to touch on for the last little bit, and then maybe look at how we can use forms inside of Teams, I just want to check in with Claudia. How are we doing in the Q&A?
Thank you so much for checking in, Kat. Still no questions in the Q&A. I've also popped a little question myself if anyone feels like they are a little bit behind. Oh, there we go. There we have one now. Can you save the form halfway through and come back to it later?
Absolutely. So this little box up at the top where it's saying saved, this is letting you know that it is saving after you do every little bit and piece. So I can see that it's fully saved now. I can simply just close it up. And when I go back to my forms area, I'm just going to give it a refresh. There we go. We can see it just there. I can open it up and just continue working on it like I had before. So really easy. You can see when I opened it, it went to saving. As long as this says saved up here, you're good to close it whenever you like and come back to it. No problem there. Anything else or anything else that you'd like to mention, Claudia?
Thank you so much. I've just published a question, and to this I will add, indeed, also one of the reasons why the form is saving as you go along is because it saves on cloud storage. So cloud storage is that one piece from Microsoft that facilitates this auto saving. So you don't have to worry about losing any of your progress in this case. But this was literally the only question that came through just now, Kat. So we are good to continue.
No problem at all. So let's take a look at a quiz now. We've probably got a really good understanding of forms. I do hope so. It's really fun to get to grips with. And now we're going to choose new quiz instead. As you can see, the interface is 99% the same. You just need to think about why you might want a quiz instead. So maybe we're going to call this a knowledge check. Let's call this a Teams knowledge check. Why not? Perhaps we've just done a training with Teams inside of our organization, and I want to do a little quiz at the end just to see how people have done. You'll notice I have pretty much the same options. We do have a Likert rating. We do have a file upload option. I can add my sections. I've got a net promoter score if I want. So all of those same sort of options. One thing we are missing is the date, of course, because why are we quizzing people on dates? We can just get them to type them in. And here we go. And if you've actually done a quiz with a similar title before, it's actually going to recommend you past questions. So if you've used a quiz, I actually made one of these earlier, I can actually click on these. It's basically just add them in as we go. So let's try again. There we go. Add selected in the top right. And voila. If I've already created a quiz with a very similar name, it'll pull questions from that location for me to reuse. Really good to save you time here. As you can see, I have set up a few questions. We have a couple of multiple choice questions. We have a describing text answer based question. And then, of course, we have this little scale here as well. But when I open this question, you'll notice there's a lot more to it than our previous multiple choice. And that's because we have the option to add a lot more. Let's create a new question just to showcase what that looks like. I'm actually going to open this one and then do add new just below. I am going to do a choice question as I think this most clearly illustrates what we've got. So I can say something like, and we're going to have a correct answer for this particular one. Maybe we want to have how can you show your feelings about a post? And I can do, so let's get rid of that option there. We're going to rename that. We can say leave a reaction. We can say highlight in a different color. Give it a shout out. Don't know what that would be, but there we are. Just some different options we have available here. We know that leave a reaction is going to be probably the best option for us and the only correct option here. So what we can do is when we hover over one of these options towards the right hand side, rather than just the bin, we also get a display message to respondents who've chosen the answer. And we also have the correct answer option. By selecting a correct answer, this portion of the quiz will automatically be graded. I don't need to go in and actually look through all of the responses and say this is worth 4 points, this is worth 5 points, whatever it may be. I can say actually this is the only correct option, and if you pick it, then I can choose how many points to get at the bottom. So maybe this is worth 5 points too. Now if I were to have multiple answers, you can still select correct answers. You can select multiple. So if you wanted to do tick all that apply, that's the way to do it. And when it comes to these, put a message to respondents, maybe leave a reaction. I can say something like, well done. You can do this by hovering over the message. Whereas for one of the wrong answers, we can say, to show how you feel about a message, you should use a reaction, etc. You can be as detailed or as simplistic as you like with these, and you don't have to do it for every single option either. So a lot of flexibility here. Again, we can make it required. And there are areas where you can add no points. So for example, describe your favorite features of a Teams meetings. I am not an English teacher. I'm not going to be grading you on your grammar or your word choice. So 0 points there. And this is where those subtitles could be very useful. You can actually come in and say that, hey, it's not scored. So it's really, really handy. Great. One other difference too, in the responses area, actually, let's do a preview. Let's take this quiz just to see what we've got. This is also where shuffling your response options could be very, very handy, just to make sure people aren't saying choose option number 1. There we go. We'll go through. Favorite features. I like co-authoring because I think it's great. How would you rate Teams as a whole? I'm going to give it a 9 star. There's always room for improvement, and then I can submit. And here, as an attendee, I can actually view my results straight away. This is a setting for the quiz. So if I want people to know exactly what they've done, I can do that. And I can even enable Immersive Reader to look through this as well. In my responses area, we do have a bit of a different option here. So now I have responses, average score, status, same as before. But now I have a couple more options. I can review answers. So if I really wanted to go through and effectively grade people on this, I can do that. So in the people area, I can see this one was recorded. This is my response. And say if this was Claudia's response and she'd chosen something else, or she'd got something wrong, or maybe I wanted to give her some different sort of points for whatever reason, I can go back in and manually edit these. Because we selected a correct answer, they've been auto-graded, but for some of the other options, we might be able to go in and change some of those scores where it's a bit more subjective. We also have these little comments next to it. This is actually feedback. So if I wanted to give feedback, say, well done, you know, good choice here. Whatever it may be. Again, you could give feedback and say, you know, come see me if you need any help with something, or, you know, sorry to hear that you're not feeling too good about working from home. Let me know how I can assist. Or if you need to read up more on this policy, maybe it's a quiz on security compliance, you can say, visit this link, and so on. Very handy. Rather than doing it by person, which will allow me to see a drop-down list and move through person by person just by using these arrows, I can also do it by question instead. So if I wanted to not know really who is doing what, and I just want to grade by question to maybe stop a few biases, whatever it may be, I can just go through and give responses as I go as well. Awesome. We also have a post scores option. So in this quiz, in the settings area, we do have towards the bottom, I believe, let me see if I can find, oh, right towards the top, my mistake. We have a little toggle switch, which is show results automatically. Remember in the preview, I could see how I did straight away by clicking see my responses. This is the button that stops that. So if you don't want people to know how well they've done until you let them know, you can toggle this off. So then people have to wait until you've basically reviewed the work yourself. This is where that post scores button comes in. So once you've done that, you know, they can't view their own responses. Then you would say post scores. I can even choose who to post. I can do all of them if I want to. Hit post scores. And now I would invite my people who took the quiz to just pop that link back in their browser, and they'll be able to actually view their results. So again, probably more useful in an educational environment, but there's plenty of use cases in the work environment too, if you want to do knowledge checks and things like that. Now, we did touch on it in a previous session, I'm sure we did, but there is Teams integration as well. So in the last couple of minutes, just showing you where you can add a form. In the general, in a channel, I should say, we have our nice Scottish Tech Army channel here. I can click plus at the top right. and I can add forms. Two ways to do this. I can create a shared form that everybody can use and see the results for, almost like creating a new form inside of Teams, giving everybody access, or I can add an existing form from my forms area. So if I wanted to add a Teams knowledge check, I can do. And I can choose whether I want that to collect responses or just show the results from that form. Really handy. There is also a little other option at the bottom, which is create a recurring survey. This allows us to create a form that will automatically be posted to the team every, well, however long you want. Pro tip here, this is actually done using Power Automate. So if you have want to stop this automatically being posted, do make sure to check Power Automate for that. We had some questions about that in the past. We can also use it inside of a chat space. So it is a messaging extension too. I can actually see I have it added down at the bottom. I can do that by going to the ellipsis, searching for forms, easy peasy. And then I can create a quick poll. All the answers for this and the poll itself will be stored in your forms page here. And that's what actually these two are. Very handy. So how are you feeling? Okay, not so good. Same as before, I can share results automatically and I can choose to keep responses anonymous or not. Preview it, we're going to send it. I'm going to close that. And there we go. We can pop that in here. Lastly, we also can use it inside of a meeting. So rather than using it in a chat, we can actually add it to a meeting very quickly, show you how to do that. Just open up the meeting in your calendar, click on the plus and add forms. Whoop, I'm not a presenter on this particular meeting. I do apologize. But if you are a presenter, this is probably, nope. If you're the organizer, you can add it to the meeting itself. Yeah, let's pop it on this one. You can see a little preview of what it looks like to use. And now we have an extra form space where I can create polls to use in a meeting in advance. So we're just going to call this question 1, option 1, option 2, you know, really boring right now. And that's saved as a draft, so then I could launch it while we're in the meeting if I want. Very handy. But that is all we have time for today. I'm sure any other questions we had will be answered in the Q&A. And I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today and ask you, if you have a little bit of time, feel free to fill in one of our own forms. And yes, this survey that you've probably seen a few times now was created in Microsoft Forms, so another real life application for you. You can change the language in the top right, just like we showed you. And here we have a selection of different responses. So you can see only this top one is required. Let us know what you thought overall. And remember, if you thought that it was only okay, then we would ask for a minimum of an 8. If you thought it was actively bad, you didn't like it, it wasn't useful, anything between a 7 and a 1 would match that description. So 8 would be bare minimum, 9 would be it was good, and 10 would be it was great. You can let me know my presenting style and how well that suited you. You can let me know about the content. And lastly, give us some more information as well if you like. Otherwise, I'm going to have to say goodbye. I do need to dash, unfortunately, and that link will be posted in there a little bit later. It looks like we're also having a few networking issues, so I do apologize about that. But I hope you found this useful and you can start creating some forms, quizzes, and polls of your own. Goodbye, everyone.